All right, good morning, folks. Thank you for tuning in for this class that technology just prevented us from doing yesterday. But as I said, I want to keep Canterbury Tales on schedule because on the other side of this, we have to fit in a research unit before the end of the quarter, which is really going to sneak up on us in the next 3 weeks. So we're going to look at two things today, and I'm going to move through them kind of quickly because I respect the time of you coming to be here with me this morning. It's very early. I haven't even had my coffee yet, but I want to get this posted as early as possible. So we're going to go through, I'm in your Canterbury folder, the introduction to Canterbury, which we're going to make brief, and then looking at the first two characters, the knight and the squire, which I've used to provide examples to you so you understand the assignments that you need to do. All right, so Canterbury Tales is written by Geoffrey Chaucer. Chaucer should be a name that sounds vaguely familiar. I mean, he's not Shakespeare, but in the terms of old British dudes whose work still stick around, he's kind of up there. Born mid 1300s in London, had lots of occupations, and this becomes important because of the way the Canterbury Tales is structured. So he was a soldier in the war for a while. He was a diplomat to France. He worked in a noble household as a page. He worked for the royal courts, meaning the actual government. And then he controlled the customs of all the ports coming into London. And so just keep that in the back of your mind as you're reading Canterbury Tales, because the way that it's structured, we're meeting lots of people and they're all defined by what their job is. And so to know that he had hands-on experience in these environments and with these positions kind of lends some credibility to the criticism that he's offering for them. So he saw a lot of the world, encountered many people from different societies during the medieval period. Here is what makes Chaucer different. Chaucer was a writer for the people. And I'm not going to click on this video, but if you want to go back and watch this, you need a good laugh for the day. It's a YouTube has lots of videos of his little tales. And this one is particularly racy. He was the first time that we have a writer for the common man. So until this point, you read if you were only of a higher class or an academic, someone important in the church or government. You didn't read for pleasure. You didn't, go into people's homes and they just had books laying out. And Chaucer changed that. Chaucer wrote for like us. He wrote for like, for people to read for fun. And because of that, a lot of his writing is very different than what we've seen until this point. And so I think this video, I think, is The Miller's Tale. And a very rough synopsis is a man whose wife was meeting someone outside her window every night. All right. So anyway, sorry, I'm pausing as phone calls and people come in. So there might be some glitchy things, but they are because I'm pausing. So anyway, the miller's wife was meeting some man outside her window every night and giving him a kiss. And so one night, the miller like pulls down his pants and sticks his bare bum out the window. And when the guy comes to kiss what he thinks is his wife, he's actually kissing her husband's rear end. So I mean, like really silly, raunchy humor like that. And so and what else is different about him is he was well known at his time. And so when we read things like we think like, wow, Shakespeare was so famous. Not so much during his time. He was a popular playwright, but there were others. Whereas Chaucer really was something that people loved as he was living and writing. So he was considered the first writer for the people. He wrote about people on their own level. He wrote what they loved to read about: dirty jokes, crude humor, raunchy stories. He is born 200 years before Shakespeare, but he is often referred to as the father of English literature. Um, this little graphic here are all words that he coined. And we see this again with Shakespeare later, that um, Shakespeare has the largest vocabulary of any writer that we know of, but it's because he created a lot of the words that he included in his plays. So, with Shakespearean language, it's written in iambic pentameter, so it has a certain rhyme to it, and so there's a certain number of syllables. And so, when there wasn't a word that would fit what he needed, he would just create one. Chaucer did the same thing. But look at some of these words: good night, Twitter, Milky Way, sluttish, praise, narcotic, womanhood, future, faddish, ablution, altercation, misery, Valentine's Day. That a lot of these were not, did not exist or were not part of everyday language until Chaucer was using them in his writing, which is kind of cool. The Canterbury Tales is considered the most known text of the Middle Ages. It was written kind of dead center of the time period we consider the Middle Ages. And it was not written to be the way that it is read. So Chaucer would write little snippets of one story and get bored with it, then write another one and get bored with it, and write another one and get bored with it. So it was only after his death that people went back and collected all of these and tried to put them together in this anthology. But a few of you, when you go to read the stories for your characters, some of them just stop. He just kind of gets bored with his character and quit. All right, moving on to Canterbury. So Canterbury is an actual town in London, or excuse me, in England, located near the coast, close to London. If you look, it's where the little Google pin is dropped on the A there. Um, da, 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 da. All right, so Thomas Becket was a religious figure of the time, who was murdered by the king because he refused to just do whatever the king wanted, that he really felt that he had divine ordinance from God on how he should lead his life and how he should lead his people. And anytime the king dictated him to do something against that, he would refuse, led to him being murdered. And so he becomes a martyr, and a lot of people make pilgrimages, long journeys to his shrine to give homage to him in the name of God. And a common thing we're going to see is that it happens at the end of winter. So it's a really great time to read this, right? So what we are reading is one of those pilgrimages that we have a group of people from different classes and different occupations that are all heading to Canterbury to give thanks to God for having survived the long, cold, hard winter. And so they're going to, well, at this point you've read it, they met up at this inn and they figure out they're all traveling to the same place. Hey, let's get together and travel. So the walk from London to Canterbury would be about 20 hours. That's nonstop walking. But of course, they're going to have to stop and rest and, eat. And so along the way, they decide that we're going to tell, the innkeeper creates this competition and they're going to tell each other stories to entertain each other and pass time. So what we're reading together is the introduction to that. What you will then go and read independently is what story your character told everyone else. But what we're reading from the textbook, the prologue, is just the introduction that walks through each character. And this is why. So the writing reflects the strong social hierarchy of the medieval England, which develops into the feudal system. You should see like some connections to what you've learned in your world history classes. The pilgrims, remember, they're making a pilgrimage. They're pilgrims, not like pilgrims and Indians. But the pilgrims represent a wide range of society. We'll have doctors and nobles, but we'll also have servants and farmers. There's a total of 29 tales. And like I said, I explained to you how it was all kind of broken up and later put together. The language is in Old English, but it's not Old English like Beowulf has. This one, we could kind of look at this writing and pull out just enough words that we could probably piece together the general idea of what he's saying. It's been several centuries since Beowulf, several centuries more until now. Um, Chaucer has a very specific type of poetry, which we'll look closer at when you do the project, that each line is a certain number of syllables. He writes in rhyming couplets, which we don't really see yet, because again, his effort was to entertain his audience, the people who were alive then. All right, the narrator refers himself as Chaucer, but it's not meant to be the writer Chaucer. So it's an author's fallacy is what we call that. You cannot assume that the narrator's commentary reflects Chaucer's. Does it? Yeah. But this is written during a time where he could still get hung for sedition, for speaking out against the government. And so he tries to be crafty in how he does it by having it always through the voice of another character, so he can forever say, this is fiction. This is just a story. And he can't be hung for writing against the government in ways that those who wrote pamphlets and things criticizing the governments were during his time. Okay, and so you have read the introduction to this. Our narrator joins the group of 29 pilgrims. And then what we're reading in the prologue is a brief description of each pilgrim. The host suggests that they all go together and tell stories that pass time. Each of them will share 2 stories on the way there and 2 stories on the way back. Not all 4 stories for all 29 characters were written. So some of you will, when you go look, see you have 2 stories. Some of you have 4, depending on how much he liked your character. All right, and whoever tells the best story wins a free meal. So what I try to do is when we do this in class, you would come in dressed up as your character and read your poem, and we would vote on the best story, and then I have like a DQ gift card for you. So it's usually a pretty fun unit, but we're going to make the most of it with working with it virtually. All right, so let's take a look at our first 2 characters. So this is a slideshow that you have due Sunday by midnight, or 10 p.m., excuse me. I try not to make them midnight because I don't want to hear back about it from parents. And first slide, expectations. What did the different people, wow, no one in your class has been working on this. I know Drake has been working on it. Okay, so what did your classmates expect of your character? A summary of what the character actually is, and a quote that shows it, and then a summary overall, and then a quote that reflects what you're analyzing about your character. Analysis should look at who is the target, what is he criticizing, what is the irony of this character, or what I refer to as the turn. We expect one thing, but something else happens instead. So for our knight, we expect him to be swooned over by the ladies. We thought he'd be handsome and muscular, skilled in battle. He would wear peasant clothes beneath shiny armor. He would speak with respect toward everyone, all classes, very protective, quick to defend the weak, a selfless character who is loyal to the king and queen. So here's a quote about the knight. He was of sovereign value in all eyes, and though so much distinguished, he was all wise. And in bearing modest as a maid, he never yet abhorred things said. Said in Old English, so it would rhyme. In all his life to any come what might, he was a true and perfect gentle knight. All right, and so my summary for the knight is, the knight was highly respected. He was considered both intelligent yet humble. Although he had many great achievements, he did not boast about them. He was kind-hearted and liked by everyone. So analysis for the knight. Here's a quote. Speaking of equipment, he possessed fine horses, but he was not gaily dressed. He wore a fustian tunic stained and dark, with smudges where his armor had left a mark. So what is the analysis there? The knight is portrayed as a character not concerned with the outward perception of his role. He is not caught up in appearance, but is humble in actually performing the duties of his role. He has fine horses because they are necessary to do his duties, but he does not dress gaily, meaning his focus is on the actual job and not garnishing attention for simply having a respected title. Now, the reality is, I know this whole story and I know what Chaucer's targets of criticism are. So the knight is a character that you're going to want to refer back to when you're thinking about other characters, because I've written that analysis in a way to kind of set you up for upcoming characters, because not performing the duties of the role expected of you and appearing to be one thing but actually being something else are very much the ways that Chaucer sets up other characters to criticize. So let's meet the squire. So the squire, by definition, was the knight's young son. We expect him to be handsome and strong, rebellious against his father, hot-headed and quick to fight. We think he's going to be unskilled with swords because he's still learning. He loves horses, spends a lot of time training them. He cares about his dress and appearance, and he's romantic and loves the attention that knights get from all the ladies. All right, so in reality, he is a lover and a cadet, a lad of fire, with locks as curly as if they had been pressed, and done valiantly in little space of time and hope to win his lady's grace. He was embroidered like a meadow bright, and full of the freshest flowers, red and white. So the squire is a young son of the night. He has fought in some battles and earned the reputation of a good warrior. He is handsome and described with youthful and innocent attributes. Unlike his father, he puts great emphasis on his appearance and dresses in a way to gain favor of the women. In our analysis, singing he was or fluting all the day, he was as fresh as the month of May. Short was his gown, the sleeves were long and wide. He knew the way to sit on a horse and ride, and he could make songs and poems and recite, knew just how to joust and dance and draw and write. So the squire is a direct contrast to his father, the knight. He is mostly concerned with his appearance and the attention that he garnishes, especially from the ladies, as a knight. He is described as having some experience in battle, so he does fulfill the duties of his role. However, rather than resting or training in his downtime, he is portrayed as having frivolous pursuits. Again, those he thinks, like his exaggerated appearance, will attract women. The squire introduces the concept of playing a role in society. This is especially emphasized by the loyal, humble, and selfless portrayal of the actual knight. This could also be a criticism of foolish youth. Okay, so hopefully from that you can clearly see the difference between summary and analysis. And if you are having a real hard time identifying what's the analysis, what is he criticizing, then you might want to look at a couple of other characters, especially like, with religious characters. He compares them a lot. There's a lot of comparing one character to another, but I'm not going to make you read this entire poem before you do this assignment. So we're going to work through it as we go, and you will probably learn more about your character as you go before the analysis paper you're going to write. So lastly, we want to take a look at the practice quiz, because you'll have one of these due daily with each reading, and this will give you an idea of what to expect from it. Now, this one will seem a little bit easier because there's only 2 characters, and you're typically reading 6-ish. So remember to fill in your chart with all the details about the characters as you read, so it'll help you on this quiz because they are timed. So typically we would have done this together in class. Which character has a more established resume for fighting in battle? That would be the knight. Although the knight is described as being skilled in battle, true, he is further portrayed as being unintelligent and boastful, false. In the description of the young squire, more attention is given to describing his appearance and artistic pursuits than to his role and duties as a knight in training. Absolutely. It's this whole description of what he looks like, what he dresses like, what he does for fun. Okay, the blank fought for charity and protection of all, while the blank is motivated to action by his infatuation with the ladies and love. All right, fought in 15 battles and always killed his man would be our knight. Wore garments with bright red and white flowers would be our squire. He stayed out all night because he loved so hotly that he got little sleep. Described as being wise and never having a boring thing to say would be the knight. All right. And so that's a taste of what these quizzes will be like. Again, this one I know is a little bit easier because there's fewer characters, but just so you know what to expect. So make sure you are closely adhering to this agenda because deadlines will sneak up to you. Thursday through Sunday, you've got little pieces together to build the steps so you can do the slides. But then starting next week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you just have readings due each day. For each reading, fill in the second column of the chart with all the details. I will be checking them. Don't submit them until Wednesday. I can go in and check them while you're actively working. And then make sure you take those quizzes before class because they will lock at class time and you do not want a 0 as a quiz grade. So thank you guys if you are watching this, and I will see you Monday.